Hello everyone, Mahojo here. Today I'm going to be talking about what I think Kamala Harris, the next possible president of America, his relationship will be with the state of Israel going into her term, because you might have seen in the news recently that the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, actually addressed the US Congress. I think it was today. It might have been tomorrow or like yesterday because of time differences. Not tomorrow, but yesterday because of time differences. And his address, in a pretty, well, not unprecedented, but in a pretty shocking move for the American Congress, his speech was actually boycotted by almost 150 Democratic lawmakers. So that's representatives and senators. We've got two houses in America. They've got the House of Representatives, which is more people, and for smaller areas, like they're more junior. There's, I believe, 435 representatives, I think. Obviously, so like about 220 Democrat, 220 Republican. But they actually don't have the House of Representatives right now. The Republicans took it. So even though they have the presidency, they don't have the House of Representatives. So it's like 210 Democrat, 230 Republican, or something like that. And the Senate, where they've got 50-50 split, there's 100 senators in there. The Senate's a bit more important, and I believe 22 confirmed senators boycotted the speech. There's different numbers going about because some people are on the fence, like they don't want to go, but they don't want to make a public announcement because maybe they'd feel like they were being too critical of Israel. But I think 22 is the most reliable number I've heard, senators. That's crazy though. 22, that's almost a quarter of the United States Senate boycotted the Israeli Prime Minister's speech to Congress. And also, I think it was just under, could have been just over again, but around, what they're saying in the headlines is around 100, because no one really knows, but around 100 Democratic representatives also boycotted the speech. So that was like a visible thing, and I've seen footage of it. I'm not subjecting myself to like a long speech to Congress by Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm not watching it, I don't care. But I've seen footage of it, and you can kind of see the emptiness. It's a bit like a movie theatre for like a mediocre movie, and I feel like Benjamin Netanyahu it's getting harder and harder for him to sell his plot line in the movie. Again, the families of the Israeli hostages who were captured by Hamas after the initial attacks, they hate Netanyahu now, and they came out railed against him after this speech, because even though he's tried to use the hostage families to say, oh, look at these poor people, we're getting them home, and at the start of the war, they've put all their weight behind Netanyahu because they thought he's going to get our hostages home, our family. They hate him now because all he says about is total victory over Hamas, going to completely destroy a state of Palestine. You know, this thing is a state of Palestine, it's all Israel, we're going to totally win, total victory, we won't stop until every Hamas militant is dead. And by Hamas militant, he just means Palestinian. And because of this language, because of this rhetoric, where he doesn't seem to care about the admittedly quite few hostages that are there, but to them, it doesn't fucking matter that there's only like 20 of them left or whatever. Like, yeah, obviously on a broader geopolitical scale, it's not, like, I mean, to him, it's not that important because he's, like, a leader of a country. But, like, to them, like, why would they care? That's their family. So they've came out against him aggressively. You know, so the Israeli hostage families, who's literally the people whose families are being held by Hamas, the easiest people to keep on your side, they've came out against him. And if you're not caught up, it's basically because since 1948 the Israeli government has been committing a genocide against Palestine. Well, in the beginning it was more the British government and the American government and the French government. It was like largely the British government, because Israel didn't sort of exist then. Because if you're not aware, the founding of like the modern state of Israel did happen around 1948. There's different things, but the initial invasion, the clearing out of that little area of Palestine that would then get bigger to make sort of the centre of what is now known as Israel, that was done mostly by the British government. And they massacred them, and that was the start of genocide. Has been going on, slowly creeping for decades since then. Every few years, the Israeli government would, creep a few miles across the border. They'd bomb a few kids. They'd create like a little no man's land, a little like zone where you couldn't go, so no one would go there. And then slowly the Israeli government would, put troops in there, or intentionally try and entice people, normally nationalists, who knew what they were getting into with really cheap housing, to give them housing that was specifically on the borderlands of Palestine to try and provoke them. And if there was ever any sort of attack back, they would just literally go completely disproportionate, just kill 100 people or whatever, just 100 civilians, no care or whatever. And a lot of these people aren't even like really Middle Eastern on, like it's just the fact that they are Jewish. I don't know if people notice, but like a lot of people in America, or I think it's anywhere in the world, if you are ethnically Jewish, or I think if your mum is Jewish, that's how they count it. If you are considered Jewish by the Israeli government, you have a certain set of rights to come to Israel. You have the right to come to Israel and do certain things. I don't know if you get full citizenship. I don't know if you're entitled to full citizenship, but because obviously the whole point of Israel is it's supposed to be a bit of a Jewish ethno-state. Obviously, culturally and historically, it's a Jewish homeland, so they think that it should be sort of a Jewish ethno-state. So you can get the opportunity to come over and go, but they kind of abuse this because they will just get a lot of right-wing American, just evil young men who are just pretty racist and just want to kill brown people. They will get a lot of them to come over, and they will build these settlements in places that are known to be Palestinian territory. The UN, like whoever, the international bodies, Amnesty International, all the official people have said, no, you can't do this. The International Criminal Court said, no, these are the borders, you can't just keep taking stuff. And then they'll wait a few years until the pressures die down, and then they'll push in again. They'll build these homes right on the border and put these people in there, and obviously they're still civilians in military sense. They're not like actual combatants. But that's the thing, it's plausible deniability. And a lot of times these people are quite armed. They will have quite a lot of weapons on them, and they will form. Okay, this isn't known. I'm not going to say this confidently because this could not be true, but there have been quite a few reports that these people have formed like militias, like paramilitaries, where the people living in these neighborhoods are loosely gathered into sort of squads. And it is known, this isn't speculation, it is known there's an awful lot of crime against Palestinians that happens over the border that the police around there just do not care about. Like, they just turn a blind eye. Like, an awful lot of them just get murdered by Israeli settlers. A lot of them just from America, just Americans who just go over and literally do colonialism and just kill them. And then a lot of the time there'll just be no investigation. It's just like an open sort of secret and open season on civilians. And it's a thing, it's like a good thing for the Israeli government because they don't have to get the military to do it. I mean, they do, but it's just an extra thing. It's just an extra arm of their, of their plan. And yeah, this blew up and got a lot more attention after October the 7th last year, when Hamas committed loads of terrorist attacks and tried to do a little bit of a unrealistic invasion of Israel. I don't know, obviously you can't get inside their minds. You can't say for sure that they knew it wasn't going to work. That they knew it wasn't going to work. But it seems like even in their minds, the amount of forces they committed to that and what they did and the places they attacked, it seems like they almost definitely knew it wasn't going to work, but they felt, it was right to just do it anyway, get martyrdom and stuff like that. So yeah, those attacks happened, and over 1,000 people died. I can't remember the specific number, but I think 1,200 or something. Quite a lot of people died. And then Benjamin Netanyahu, he loved this because it gives him an excuse every time there is an attack on Israel, especially if it's like horrible, especially if civilians get killed. Benjamin Netanyahu, actually, you might not think this at first, but he actually loves it because it gives him an excuse. And that's exactly what happened here. He was hemming in the Palestinian people more and more over decades. Gaza was, not really anymore because we don't know how many people are alive there, but Gaza was the most densely populated country or place on earth. Just a place, not even a country. Like, think about all the places in densely packed cities you've seen. Gaza was the most densely packed, like significantly large geographical area in the world. It's basically a ghetto, it's basically a concentration camp, an open air concentration camp. And then obviously, if you've already got terrorist groups operating in these areas, there is going to be some sort of terrorist attack, and the blood of those civilians is almost on Benjamin Netanyahu's hands more than it is Hamas. So after this, he took that as an excuse to just sort of go all out and just really start just trying to wipe Palestine off the face of the earth. So yeah, that's sort of the very brief lowdown of what the deal is over there with Israel and Palestine. So here we are now, where over 100 Democratic lawmakers in America, Israel's staunchest ally, who for how long is it now? We're in July, almost August, started in October, almost 10 months. For almost 10 months of this latest phase of the genocide, have done full-throated, full-chested, 100% support for Israel. No conditions, no red lines, no warnings, no public criticisms. Fully supporting them, supplying them big, massive weapons, big bombs that they have used to commit loads of war crimes, blow up thousands of children, just little babies, just doing nothing, with no actual military threat anymore to the state of Israel, just for no reason, just terrorism. It's a terrorist state. But the United States of America, and they have actually backed off slightly, and it would, I want to say, I would be hopeful to say that that has been caused in itself by all these sort of campus protests you saw. You might have seen, well, there were university protests in America about they're just full-on support of Israel, and a lot of regular protests as well outside of campuses, and all the pressure, all the grassroots pressure that a lot of like Americans, smart Americans, studious Americans have been putting on their government to stop supporting Israel, or at least supporting them so confidently, so strongly. I would like to say that those efforts in themselves are what made this happen, but I think it's been more complicated than that. I think that did affect it, yeah. I think that is sort of the reason why, but I think what's happened here is that all of the outrage about the aiding and abetting of the Palestinian genocide done by the White House, and specifically Joe Biden himself on a personal level, his personal support for the Israeli project and the genocide, I think it made, like, they all made the voice very clear that this was a massive issue for specifically young voters, non-white voters, very specifically Muslim voters, obviously, because, you know, there's a lot of Palestinians are Muslim, and it kind of plays into sort of, you know, those sort of senses of, you know, internationally Muslims are sort of seen as like just like the bad people. It plays into that, where they think like, why is like my people, in their view, like why are my people being seen as like the bad ones, and all this propaganda when they're literally getting genocided. And so much of the mainstream media in that country, the country that is supposed to be for every race, every culture, America, is just so in support of this genocide against people of my religion. Obviously, if you're a Muslim voter, you would hate that. So I think all these protests and all this outrage has made it very clear that that's a problem. But I think the actual thing, the actual driver that has made them think about it and has made them do something about it finally, the actual driving force, is the fact that this election is going to be so close. So this ties in with the other stuff I've been talking about, which is Joe Biden dropping out of the US general election, and they're in a state of massive flux right now, because Kamala Harris has just got in. She's been in the candidacy, or the presumed candidacy, for about a week. They have no idea how this is going to go. A US presidential candidate has never dropped out this late into the race. Joe Biden is, and being an unprecedented quitter here. Nah, jokes. It's a good idea. It's the right decision that he quit. But this is unprecedented. She is a black woman. America, you know, large portions of America are not going to be happy about that. It's a big state of flux. It's a really weird presidential race. They just seem to keep getting weirder in America. Not as weird over here. I haven't got much to say. You might be thinking why I haven't said much about the UK election stuff. I'll just quickly touch on it here. Well, it's just quite simple, innit? Okay, here's my British electoral politics roundup. Bit shite, innit? Fucking Tories. And then on the election, oh fuck, Tories out, innit? Fuck now. Oh, fucking Labour in, it's alright. They're a bit less shite. They're slightly less shite than the Tories. That's my analysis. Basically, Labour are slightly less shite than the Tories. Things are still a little shite. Things are probably going to get quite a bit less shite. Slowly but surely. That's what you need to say. There isn't this sort of craziness. Like, we all knew it was going to happen. We all knew Labour was going to get like a landslide, and it just happened. But all this unpredictability and all these details are why I'm talking about this election, even though I don't live there. And I think, you know, the world's most powerful country getting taken over by fascism or not is a pretty interesting thing for anyone in the world to look at. So I think it's quite a specific and nuanced thing in that if it wasn't for this election being so close and all the problems with Biden, I don't think they would have done this. I don't think so many mainstream like politicians literally in the seats of power of America would have boycotted Benjamin Netanyahu's speech. But also, I think that without all those protests and all the outrage and all the resistance from the grassroots and some politicians as well, AOC has been a bit... I mean, she's not been anywhere near as bad as Biden, but, you know, some politicians have been sort of speaking out. I think if it wasn't for that as well, similarly, then that wouldn't have happened. Even with the stuff with Biden, I don't think, in their liberal ignorance, I don't think they would have seen it as they would have just been like, oh, why are we losing all these voters? And I guess it's weird thinking about hypotheticals, because in that situation they wouldn't have lost the voters, because it wouldn't have happened, because there wouldn't have been outrage, but you know what I mean. Like, the fact that there has been such a clear signal and such a clear drop in support, not just about the actual signalling of the message, but people actually being on it, young people actually being switched on, having good media comprehension, in a lot of cases now, better media comprehension than older people. All the times when we were kids, the narrative was that young people get swept up into things on social media, and obviously that is true, and obviously in terms of brute numbers that is still true, because there are obviously just more young people online. So in that sense, yeah, the fact that there are more young people online, there are more young people who are likely to be swept up in things. But it seems recently that because we've sort of grown up with a lot of this stuff, maybe not me, maybe people a few years younger than me, basically all of their childhoods we've been living in like quite a technology omnipresent world. Maybe people 5 years younger than me, that'd be like the benchmark. And a lot of the time these kids, or not even kids, some of them are like adults now, 18, 19, almost my age, a lot of them are a lot more switched on when it comes to like misinformation than older people are. So with a lot of this, like, and also the fact that the internet can be a very monopolious and very consolidated thing, but there is still a lot of space on the internet for independent voices and for people who just have cameras on their phones just to first-hand film something. And now, specifically this year, I mean, not even when it started, because AI is taking off so quickly, but not even really in October 2023, but since then, AI imagery has become a bit of a problem, but nowhere near the sort of problem where it's becoming really hard to verify shit. Like, I'm on Twitter a lot, and okay, I'll give you the benchmark with AI. Maybe a historian will look back on this and be shocked. But the benchmark with AI video stuff right now is that it's just out there on social media. I don't mean high quality tests, I mean just stuff that's out there that people make and post online. Okay, the stuff right now is like short, fake, silly videos that can trick people with 90 IQ or less, or maybe if you don't look at it, or it's quite a simple thing that isn't very detailed, or there isn't a lot of room to go wrong, and or if you don't look at it closely for more than 10 seconds, a video could fool someone. But we're not at the point right now, if you're not really involved in this stuff, just so you know, we're not at the point right now, and hopefully we won't be for quite a few years, where it is practical to readily just fake like specific, realistic, urban, busy footage extended, not only to the point where it fools the naked eye of people who don't know what they're doing, but also people who do know what they're on about, and also like programs that are meant to spot this stuff, because obviously it's easier to spot it with a program, because obviously you can use the similar sort of technology to find the technology that, you know, manipulated the video. But we are not at that point, and all of that is right now becoming more of a problem, and maybe in a year or 2 years it'll be something you need to more seriously constantly think about. Is this fake? Is this fake? Right now and in 2023 we were not at that point. So a lot of young people and a lot of educated people and a lot of young educated people who have good media comprehension, probably have a good like media diet, a good informational diet. They don't just watch stupid unreliable sources or whatever, and they know how to spot if something's trying to trick them. They, you know, knew what was going on. It was just so obvious, and then they got really pissed off about the genocide, because, you know, probably don't like genocide as well. And this was one of the main reasons that Biden's poll numbers dropped. Now, obviously, the big attention has been on his fitness, his age, and I've talked about that a lot, but that is more the direct catalyst, the more direct cause of why this is happening. In a more long-term sense, they wouldn't have even been in that situation they were in with Biden, where people were talking about how old he was, if they weren't already a fraction of a point behind Trump because of all the Palestine shit. Biden was never really growing quickly in the polls. He never really had a big boost after all of his dramas, but he was consistently slowly going back up in approval ratings as the American economy started to improve. But you didn't see much of that. You didn't see a long pattern of that, because obviously October 7th happened, and since then he was just like, okay, that means you can just genocide an entire country of like 4 million people. And a lot of the American media hasn't really mentioned this. I haven't really seen anyone mention this, but before that terrible debate that Joe Biden had with Donald Trump, which initially sparked a lot of the mainstream worries about him not being fit, at that point they were already, I think I mentioned this, maybe 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, depending on what you read, points behind Trump already. I mean, that was already such a failure. 34 times felon, and he was known and found guilty of doing to E. Jean Carroll, you know, unspeakable things. And even though it wasn't a criminal case, he was found liable. So, official sex offender, 34 times felon, tried to overturn an election. He was leading him at a lot of points, but Big Joe had to fumble that easy dub by just aiding and abetting a genocide. Why not? Why not? With basically a year to go before an election, up against someone who wants to take over the most powerful country in the world and make it fascist, why not just randomly start a genocide? Right, not start, but aid and abet in the continuation of a genocide. Great timing, just the impeccable skill at losing. That is unbelievable. That is like actively trying to lose. But yeah, so although it's weird, because this might be quite unexpected, because a lot of the internal stuff with America about the Israeli Palestinian genocide, I guess it is kind of an Israeli genocide, and I guess Hamas's actions were genocidal, but it's not an ongoing thing. A lot of that has gone out the news when it comes to American politics, because it's been all about Biden and his fitness, all about Donald Trump getting shot, all that stuff, all about his vice president, all about him getting bloody convicted of felonies. A lot of Palestine stuff, with not on its own, but with relation to America, has been out the news. But that is still very present, and now that issue is settled. Of okay, the ancient man is out of office. Okay, well, still, basically, almost all young voters, all young educated voters hate us. And I don't know if you noticed, but those are basically the Democrats' three biggest, most loyal bases: young people, educated people, and specifically young educated people. And now specifically, like in terms of big demographics, the three groups that they pissed off the most. There aren't that many Muslims in America. They probably pissed off the Muslim community the most, you know, which makes sense. But you know, I don't think proportionally in terms of percentage there are that many Muslims in America. Obviously that makes a difference, because in America, you know, elections are decided by 2 percentage points, but They pissed off the Muslim community, which is, again, really heavily leans Democrat. They pissed off specifically the Muslim community, the non-white community, young people, educated people, and specifically the super Democrat crowd, educated young people. Educated young people have literally been spearheading all the protests that have been happening. They literally had campus protests. You know, a campus, a place where they educate young people. And under a democratic government, in an election year, they were violently cracking down. You know, like sending in the police and, you know, riot police and just attacking them, you know. I mean, people talk about politicians attacking their base, but that is literally attacking your base. So he super fumbled that, and even though people have been distracted by this whole age thing, they still need to sort that underlining issue that about 5 of their big demographic strongholds now just hate them. So I think this was a little bit surprising at first, but then I thought about it and I was like, okay, this makes sense. The Democrats aren't magically, they haven't actually changed their minds, or even failing that, this isn't directly because of the organic pressure that was applied from the ground up. I don't think it's worked maybe as well as people would have hoped. I don't think people should get overexcited about this. Think about the context of all that has been and all that will be, or whatever Kamala says. You didn't just fall out of a coconut tree. But think about the context in terms of the election in which this is happening. Don't try and remove this event from the US election. It's very much linked to it. I don't think this is a big sign of Kamala's America being, you know, a lot less supportive of Israel. I don't think that's what this is. What I think Israeli-US relations will be like in Kamala's America will be slightly better in the sense that there'll be worse relations, but it'll be a better outcome. Because here's the thing about Kamala Harris. I have a bit of a theory that she is a true believer in that, like, platitude, that sort of platitude that you might hear in American politics say, where, oh well, if you want to get stuff done, you have to compromise. And although that itself is obviously true, that's obviously a true statement, they don't mean it like that. When they say it, they're talking about situations and examples where you just compromise everything and never do anything and never make any sort of hard decision or never commit to anything. It's not about this road. It's hard finding a place where there aren't people walking around all the time in a city. And obviously I go to the park. It gets quite dark on the park. So I've got to go somewhere else eventually, because then I just look like a nonce walking around the park, or I'll get actually nonced. Not nonced, because I mean, look at me, but like beat up. So that is obviously a true phrase, but it's used often in a way that just means compromise on everything, never do anything strong, or never speak or act aggressively against your opponent at all. Coat everything in civility politics, coat everything in 6 months of dilly-dallying and preparation and boardroom meetings and committee meetings and stuff. So obviously a lot of the time that is used, and like they don't even believe in that. A lot of the time that is just used as an excuse by Democrats who are fully conscious of the fact that they are pretty bad people and what they do is pretty bad, but they just lie and they just say that. But obviously politics and politicians are a sliding scale. It's not like a movie where like every politician is actually like cartoonishly, fully consciously evil. A lot of the time people become evil or do evil things. I'm not saying that like it doesn't make them evil. A lot of the time doing evil things just makes you evil. But a lot of the time people are made evil by specific conditions, and it varies a lot. It's not some sort of like gaggle or some like cabal. They're real people who are subject to material conditions. Material conditions affect everything. So there are some who are true believers in certain things and some who aren't. And for example, an easier example is Republicans who either are they actually racist? I'm sure a lot of Republican politicians are genuinely in their heart fully believe racist, but a lot of them also probably couldn't give a fuck about racism, but like just want to make money. And similarly, there's a lot of Democrats, like, I don't know, Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden or Chuck Schumer or whatever, who will say, listen guys, we've got to compromise, we've got to work across the aisle, we can't be too crazy about this. And when they say be too crazy, they mean ever doing anything. And they fully know that that's just a lie and just a thing to say to get people to shut up. But there are obviously a lot of politicians who do genuinely believe in that. And I think that Kamala Harris might be a genuine believer in that. Because firstly, her mannerisms, even though she's quite an unsettling person, you can normally tell, if you watch politicians for as long as I have, you can normally tell just through mannerisms. I know this isn't very scientific, but you can get a feeling just personally of who's real and who's not. Now, the example I've used before, somebody like Ron DeSantis, a lot of the time, if just by looking at them, even if you haven't watched politicians a lot, you can tell there's something wrong with that guy. He's empty. Like, he hasn't got much of a soul or whatever. It's weird. But with Kamala, you can tell she's got a soul. You know, she's human. She enjoys life. You know, she enjoys joy. She is a human being in a full sense. But and if you go into politics, I feel like, especially if you are within and have worked within liberal institutions, liberal capitalist institutions for your whole life, especially being a lawyer and having all the bureaucracy and the law and the technical stuff and the paperwork and all the red tape in your head and having that drilled into you, that is basically your religion. And then you go into politics and you spend your life with your mental frameworks completely inside all the civil, polite institutions of post-World War II capitalist America, then you can genuinely get sort of brainwashed into being extremely neoliberal and just extremely impotent and just ineffective at doing anything, and ending up almost always acting in the material conditions of the capitalist class. Now, aside from just my subjective view of her mannerisms, there are a couple more real things that seem to suggest that Kamala is actually sort of a real deal, not fully faking her involvement in politics just for like money or purely a cynical chase of power or whatever. There is this story that she tells sometimes, which seems to have been verified, where she was a protester, a die-hard protester who used to go out every day and protest against increased police funding, as opposed to sort of in contrast to other services. And specifically, she tells a story, you might have heard this before. She's been criticised so much for this, actually. It is bad, but bear with me. She used to say that her and her colleagues or whatever used to go out with the pickets in front of, I think it was a police station or somewhere, but they were protesting somewhere, and their slogan they were saying is less cops, more schools, I think it was. Yeah, less cops, more schools they were going. And she says every day she go out there, chant, less cops, more schools, less cops, more schools, stuff like that. And then she tells the story, and she's like, oh, but when I got older, she's like, oh, but you know, then I realised after a while that, yeah, it's all well and good saying less cops in schools, but a lot of those teachers that you're trying to hire, because they wanted to hire more teachers instead of more cops, well, that doesn't fix the problem that a lot of those teachers go home and still have 5 locks on their door. And it's like, that's just like basically a non sequitur. That just doesn't follow. It doesn't even make sense. The whole point of what you were saying was saying that, okay, you're not going to actually solve problems of crime, and we know for a fact, of an unbelievable amount of studies, unbelievable amount of evidence, we know it is a matter of record that just increasing the amount of cops and increasing the amount of law enforcement is not a better way to decrease crime than increasing access to education, quality of education, increasing access to employment, and generally increasing the economic conditions in that area. So it is just basically undeniable. It's like, if you believe that it's more efficient to stop crime to just hire more cops, as opposed to hire more teachers, build more houses, you know, help homeless people get off drugs. It's that stuff a lot of the time is proportionally less expensive than hiring cops. It's very expensive to train and hire and maintain cops. That if you don't believe that, then you either just do not know enough yet, or like you are genuinely stupid, or you're lying. Like, I just can't see how anyone who is informed about that situation and not actually stupid could believe that. It's just undeniable. But she just had like a non sequitur of, oh, even though the whole problem we're trying to solve is the rate of crime, because the rate of crime is high, and teachers that we're trying to hire have to put locks on their door right now. We should just hire more cops and not solve the problem and just shoot more black kids, basically. So although on its own that is a very bad thing, and she shouldn't have said that, and it's just really tragic and a bit annoying that her mind got sort of changed like that by the institutions, but it is evidence that she seems to be one of those people that is a true believer, and they start off and they get sort of brainwashed and changed by capitalist neoliberal systems and into genuinely believing some very stupid and harmful things. And I feel like that might have happened to her. There's another thing as well. She has a history of, in her youth, being quite an activist DA, and it's weird because, like, here's another thing where, okay, here's where, like, cop Kamala comes from. Kamala was a cop, and there's this thing about Kamala locking up loads of black men. The thing is, it's because she followed the law, and she followed, well, not really following the law, but she didn't go against the grain. She didn't go against legal convention and legal precedent to let men off with, mostly men, off with marijuana charges. I think she admitted to smoking marijuana, but even though as she was a district attorney, basically a prosecutor, big important prosecutor in California, I think it was, she enforced, and apparently quite strictly enforced, marijuana possession laws, which are very stupid in America, where a lot of the time you can get put in prison, American prison, for 5 years if you possess marijuana. And she was going along with stuff like that, but she put dozens of black men from, like, deprived areas who just had a bit of pot on them in fucking jail, in these fucked up jails in, like, California. And it's like, how does that track? Like, that's such a scummy thing to do. But she was also known for years to be an activist DA about, like, stuff to do with sexual assault, breaking up for-profit universities, so they couldn't rip off kids in California as much as they could at one point. That is actually a big thing that did so much good in California, and she will probably go down in history for that, at least in the legal community. What else was it? I think there's something to do with medicine, but that's the big thing. For-profit universities, specifically, like, specialising in sexual abuse stuff. There's something else, but I can't remember it. But she is known for being, like, a progressive activist attorney. And although there is a profit incentive here, even though you wouldn't think there is shockingly in America still a profit incentive to do things like that. Because even if you take a lot of work pro bono, so for free basically, and your client might be poor, your client might not be rich, and they might not be able to pay you much, and it looks like, oh, you're so heartfelt just doing it for free basically, but a lot of time they'll get a cut. If it's a civil case and they sue, a lot of time that attorney will get a cut. So yeah, there's leeway to say that, okay, maybe that was all an act, maybe she was just doing it all for money, and she was taking pro bono work, so it looked like she was a saint and taking the money. But it just seems like too much. She seems too real. I feel like I'm pretty good at reading politicians' mannerisms at this point. There are a couple stories about things she did. But I can't remember all of them, but there are quite a few reports of her doing things in her youth where, like, to deny that is an organic part of her personality, you'd start to get into sort of conspiratorial territory here, because these are things about her that go back, like, decades, where, like, if it was some sort of plan to, like, be the president or be the VP or get into a big role, like, she'd have to be really thinking about it so far back and so specifically and so consistently and elaborately, and stuff like that normally doesn't happen. People can get quite conspiratorial, but, like, as much as I am sort of, like, you know, crazy stuff does go on, and, you know, very realistic about the evils of capitalism and the evils of, you know, right-wing stuff and the evils of politics, the fact is, most of the time conspiracies don't really happen. There are very few, like, real conspiracies in the world. It's always just material conditions and material interests. People just act in their material interests in a capitalist system. That's it. Like, that's all you really need to keep the system running. There is no, like, maybe it's more satisfying for people to have, like, a big shady group of people, but no, like, no one really knows what they're doing. It's quite unlikely that there are these actual big drawn out plans or like fake stories where they'll go back and like maybe you're suggesting someone's gone back and faked her entire life, but like stuff like that doesn't really happen. So it seems like there is some genuine heart to Kamala Harris, and she has for a while been a bit sus about Israel. She's been very quiet during Joe Biden's reign about Israel, and it's coming out now that might have been because she's privately voiced more tepid language. Again, it's Kamala. This is what I'm saying. It doesn't seem like it that much because it's all this neoliberal language. She's so cowardly, so scared to speak out. Not been speaking out aggressively or in like anywhere near as strong terms as she should have. Because she genuinely believes it's just being responsible, it's just being careful to slightly pressure Joe Biden and say, maybe we should be a bit more pressurizing on Netanyahu and say, it's time to end this now. You've got a right to defend yourself, but it's time to end this. And Joe has just said, no, I just love killing babies, basically. And then it came out today that apparently, we don't know this, but apparently she said to Benjamin Netanyahu, it's time to end the war in Gaza. And again, that is just a very slight pushing of the boundaries, because even Joe Biden was starting to say, you know, we need to find a path to the end, which is like very slightly different language, but that's how they do it. They like over months and months, how America does stuff is changing the language of stuff. So Biden was like, okay, I'm gonna make a big change here. I'm gonna slightly change the wording and say we need to find a path to the end. So he's even daring to imply that there is an end to this conflict, that at some point Israel will stop attacking Palestine. He's even daring to, you know, point that out. But Kamala's gone a bit further and just said, you know, it just needs to end. And it seems like she will put a bit of pressure on Netanyahu to end this. And especially the fact that she is now, even if she's not the president, Biden's still the president, she is now more at the forefront and has more sway probably. And especially, again, don't unlink this from the election. They need to win this election. I think that in the next few months, you'll see big rhetorical changes, followed by probably small policy changes. One example that I can think of is that in response to this particular massacre of about 60 or maybe more, about 150, I can't remember the name. I know it's disrespectful, I can't remember, but I'll put it in the description. But it was quite a few dozen people who were literally, they were filmed from a drone strike. It was so obvious. They were running to a designated safe space to get like flour, humanitarian aid, to get food. They just literally not even like actual finished products, just flour. And it was so obvious. They were all huddling. A crowd came to get the flour. They were just civilians, obviously civilians, scrambling to get food. And there was clear footage of it. So whoever had the drones, and they would have had drones in the air above, knew it and could see the footage. And they just obviously blew up like dozens of these people on footage, like clear footage, and it was spread everywhere. So even then, it was hard for even Biden to ignore that. So after that, they stopped a single shipment, one shipment of £2,000 missiles. I don't think, I can't remember if that is £2,000 as in the total weight of the missile, or £2,000 of explosive, because sometimes it can mean either. But basically some of the biggest bombs that America regularly supplies Israel, they stopped one shipment of those bombs. So I feel like Kamala, figuring she wants to do something about this, but she doesn't want to break the mold too much because she's a Democrat, she will probably go down that path and probably stop or delay shipments of larger weapons, larger missiles to Israel. I don't think this happened quickly. Again, you would think that a reasonable response to the situation would be to quickly drop or decrease your support for Israel to get more support in the election. And you'd be right in thinking that, but they're Democrats, so whenever there's any sort of chaos going on, this is a very chaotic, fluctuating time, their instinct is to hold on tight and hang on to the ship and not do anything. So I don't think in the next month or so, or in the next few weeks, and maybe not before the election, you'll get any practical commitments. Maybe you will. It depends on what Netanyahu says. He's a psycho. You might just start going off at Kamala and then piss her off. But like, I think at least in the next month or so, you're not going to get any big announcements like that. But I think that when the dust, well, not the dust starts to settle, but as you get closer to the election and hopefully more factors, like hopefully it's not as weird as the past few weeks as it has been, and things can just start to even out a little bit, so they can think, are we going to go ahead with this? Have we given them enough warning? And obviously the answer is yes, but they need to decide we've given them enough warning, and then maybe they'll cut off some deliveries, or maybe it'll happen after the election. So that's what I think. I think things will be rhetorically a lot better under Kamala, and practically a bit better. Yeah, that's the summary really. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Sorry about all the cars and shit. It's hard to find, because I end up going out quite late. It's hard to find places in night where you can just sort of go quietly. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll see you in a bit. Bye bye.